Gary, very good morning to you. Lovely to see you. We spoke to you before the game on Friday. There was that feeling of positivity, wasn't there, after the Croatia result? What has this Scotland performance done to that now?
It's obviously created some doubts and some criticism of the performance. I mean, 2-3 days on now, I'm sat here, and the only thing that concerns me now, really, you can play badly in a game of football any time, but the thing that really concerned me from Friday night was the physical levels, and I'm not sure why that occurred, and I can't think of a good reason why that occurred. So it's one of two things: one, the players are very tired, and if they are, then we've got a real problem, or two, that they allowed themselves, I suppose they were a little immature in terms of 7 or 8 of those players. It's probably the biggest game they've ever played for England. And they mentally built the game up so much that they drained themselves. So that either is not a good thing. So for me, the real thing that worried me from the Friday night performance was the sort of lethargic element of it and the fact that they were ponderous. You know, this idea that I've heard that Reece James and Luke Shaw didn't get forward because, you know, they were held back. I don't believe for 1 second Gareth Southgate instructed Reece James and Luke Shaw before the game not to cross the halfway line and go forward at speed. They didn't look like they could go forward at speed like we've seen them all year for Manchester United and Chelsea. So my concern was, it wasn't just a Harry Kane thing. I know the focus has been on Harry Kane and how he looked unfit, but the rest of them lacked sharpness. Raheem Sterling wasn't sharp. Phil Foden wasn't sharp. James and Shaw weren't sharp. Phillips and Rice in midfield weren't as quick to the ball in terms of breaking things up. This wasn't just a Harry Kane sort of unfit problem. And even when Grealish and Rashford came on, the impetus to the performance didn't change. It just sort of flatlined. So for me, going into the Czech Republic game tomorrow night, understanding that I have played in teams with England in tournaments that have, to be fair, fatigued and not look like they are at their absolute best physical level, that is the only thing that I'm looking at in the first 5-10 minutes tomorrow night against the Czech Republic. Is the sharpness back, and was it just a mental thing going into that Scotland game because they built it up too much?
It's fascinating, Gary, isn't it, to watch the other nations as well. Is there a sense that this is not just endemic in the English team? I'm thinking of the French, maybe the Spanish, who had their problems with COVID, maybe the Germans as well, although Italy seem to have hit the straps straight from the off, don't they? So could it be other factors coming into play?
Yeah, I mean, look, we know that there are teams in this tournament that have got more quality than sort of others, but I think the team that physically is in best shape, that has the least amount of injuries, have got a great advantage. You're right, you know, France just got over the line against Germany, then they obviously drew against Hungary. So England aren't the only team that have had what would be difficult moments so far in this tournament. And the fact that England are on 4 points going into the Czech game is a good thing. You know, it should qualify for the next phase. There has been, I think, a massive reaction. I'm going to stay clear of overreaction because I do believe fans should be able to, you know, essentially, you know, boo if they want to boo after a game and be as critical as they want to be. But I do believe there has been a massive reaction to the Scotland performance. And, you know, I hope tomorrow night against the Czech Republic that it can be sort of, if you like, put into context and that England return to what would be a previous level that we've seen them. But the other teams as well are not perfect yet, and we have to, you know, look at that and gain some confidence from it.
Obviously, there's been a lot of references to Euro 96. It's a European Championship. Wembley is one of the venues here. The parallels, perhaps, with Alan Shearer going into that tournament and what we're seeing with Harry Kane now. Is there parallels that can be drawn there? How do you solve the conundrum of Kane at the moment?
Well, Gareth yesterday did the interview where he confirmed that Harry Kane would play. I said last week I felt he was undroppable, and I still maintain that. I think if Harry Kane had someone behind him who was even close to him that could go into the team, then he'd say maybe you could look at maybe a change, but you wouldn't change Harry Kane quickly or easily for that matter. Same with Alan Shearer. And the reason that you compare those two is that I think they're the most single-minded, high-quality English strikers that we've seen. Both of them very similar. I think Kane's the only player that I think could ever even think of getting close to Alan's Premier League record, and I think he will. I think he'll break all England's records, Wayne Rooney's goal-scoring record. You don't just drop your caps in your main goal scorer after 2 matches. But I think generally the energy and urgency and intensity in England's performance has got to improve all round for Harry Kane to do well in this tournament. You know, in the first game, we felt that was a sort of controlled performance, managed Croatia, very hot day, playing against an experienced team. Everyone was really happy with that. But against Scotland, like I say, it was a massive drop-off. And I think, I don't care who you are, you would have struggled as a centre-forward in that game if you were an Englishman. So there are some comparisons to Euro 96. People are asking for Alan Shearer to be dropped going into the tournament. He hadn't scored, but he did score in the second game. Harry Kane hasn't yet. But we got 4 points in the first two games in Euro 96. We drew with Switzerland and we beat Scotland, and they missed a penalty. So there are some comparisons, but in the third game we really turned it on against Holland. And you know, if England were to really win well against the Czech Republic tomorrow night, then I think it would put them in good confidence ahead of what's going to be a really difficult second round game if they were to win, because they play obviously the second team in the group of Germany, Portugal and France.
Yep, stick or twist, that's always the question, isn't it, for an international coach or any coach anywhere, isn't it? You touched on the fullbacks. What would you do there?
Well, I think we're all surprised by Trippier's selection in the first game, but then when it worked and they kept the clean sheet, I think we all thought, well, okay, that's fine. I think we were all delighted when we heard the news on the morning of the game against Scotland that Reece James and Luke Shaw came in. And then post-game, it's almost the analysis of those two players as such that, you know, they weren't allowed to go forward. I cannot believe for 1 second, I'm going to repeat what I said before, that there was instruction from the coaching staff of England to say to Reece James and Luke Shaw, just be careful tonight, hold yourselves back. Because if they were giving them that instruction, they would have picked Trippier and Walker. They wouldn't have picked James and Shaw. You're only picking James and Shaw to run forward really quickly, put crosses in the box, join the attack, overlap, underlap, do all the things that they do. So for me, I was more worried about the fact that they didn't look sharp. They didn't look like they had the energy. I definitely think Walker will come back in. It wouldn't surprise me if Trippier came back in as well. But we may see Shaw again. What I don't think we can see is, say, Chilwell come in for Shaw and have three different left backs in the first three games, and then just changing them around all the time. I think now's the time for some consistency and some continuity. I think that in the first two games it made sense to do what Gareth did, but I think in this game now we need to start settling on a team, and that might mean as well that Harry Maguire comes back in if he's going to get back into this tournament. If he doesn't play tomorrow against the Czech Republic, I don't know how he can come back in against a Germany or a France or a Portugal in round two.
And you would think that would be for Mings. How harsh would that be on him? Because he hasn't really put a foot wrong, has he?
No, he hasn't. And to be fair, I think that Tyrone Mings has got a case to play, partly because he's done well in the first two games, but also because he's fit and he's ready. So I think it's now or never for Maguire. Wouldn't surprise me for Mings to stay in, but I think then we might see a more pragmatic choice at left back if Mings stays in, because I think that Gareth really does value clean sheets, as every coach does. And I think he realises, I mean, look, I've seen some, and I disagree maybe with some of the fans that I've seen on social media in the last few days say, we've got to go and attack teams. What does that mean? I saw the other day someone, I think it was on the show I did, I think did they get the show on Saturday afternoon, Portugal, Germany, where there was a feeling that we should play Foden and Rice in midfield. We cannot empty midfield and expose that back four. I mean, Gareth will not do that. But, you know, I think we've got to just be a little bit sensible that the only chance we do have in this tournament is to have that box, those two centre-backs and that Rice and Phillips in midfield, and hope that our full-backs that we've got, which are really strong, we've got attacking full-backs that I think most nations would love. And then we've got really good wide players in Rashford, Sterling, Sancho, Grealish, you know, Foden. Those are really talented players. And if our fullbacks and our wide players can start to show a little bit of quality that they've got and that urgency and intensity in the game and sharpness, then Kane will score goals. So for me, it's about making sure that we're not jumping from sort of what would be this feeling, oh, we weren't creative and we need to now throw Foden in midfield and do different things. I don't think that's the way Gareth will go, and it's not the way in which I would go.